horseshoe is back.
What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice Colts podcast. We're bringing you a preview of Sunday afternoon's game between the Indianapolis Colts and the Miami Dolphins. I have two special guests with me today, Carter Melrose, podcaster and writer at DolphinsTalk.com, and Dougley Do Wrong. If you guys watch any content involving Miami Dolphins, then you probably have heard of this guy. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Doing very well.
Yes, me as well. Thank you so much, Derek, for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that I was able to get you guys on. You know, with the way these two teams have played out the season so far, you know, it's kind of difficult to want to talk football right now, but here we are, and we're going to make the best of it. So I wanted to talk to you guys. Dolphins are 1-2, currently third in the AFC East, if I'm not mistaken. Last week's loss to the Raiders, that was definitely a nail-biter. I kept track of the last bit of that game. Obviously, very close down to the end. How are you two feeling? We'll start with Doug on this. How are you feeling about your team so far this season?
I feel like the thing that is holding this team back the most is the offense. But other than that, like if the offense can just get it going, because last week the offensive line did do better than I thought they would. Brissett had time to throw. It was just missed throws and kind of miscommunication, especially on that horrendous play on their own 1 yard line. I feel like the Dolphins should have won that game last week. There was a few missed throws. There was a missed pass interference call in the end zone, not going for it on fourth down in overtime instead of kicking the field goal. There's some miscues that really gave the game to the Raiders, going up 14-0 and then kind of just faltering there. But as a team, I feel like the way Brian Flores works, which I wish he didn't work this way, it takes him a minute, and it's like a little bit of a process in the beginning of the season to get his team going. Because even last year we were 1-3, and then we beat the Jets, we beat the 49ers, go 3-3, put Tua in, and then the ball started rolling. So I'm not ready to call it quits on the season, but that offensive line and the offense in general needs to step up because the defense is doing its thing, but it can only do it for so long.
Right. Carter, how have you felt about this 1-2 start?
Honestly, I don't know how to take it so far because it's hard to really decide on the team when your starting quarterback isn't even in the game. I don't know. I watched last week's game and I go, we should have won that game, like Doug said. And the thing is, the Raiders are a really good team, and we almost beat them with our starting quarterback on the bench. So I feel very confused is what I have to say on the matter. Like, I don't feel really good or really bad, but I think we should be 2-1 going into this game. It's tough, but we shall see. I don't feel like we're just kind of staying afloat till Tua gets back. We shall see. We shall see.
Yeah, I mean, the Colts are kind of in the same situation as you guys. I mean, three really tough teams to start out the year. And, I mean, the Colts are not getting blown out in any of the games, but are obviously just losing by beating themselves in a lot of different ways. Kind of get into more of that as we go along. But, I mean, Carter, I'll ask you about the Dolphins injury report. I mean, I was talking about it with Doug before we got on that, compared to this Indianapolis Colts injury roster, it's really not that bad at all. Give us a little rundown of some of the guys who are on it.
Well, I haven't seen it today. I know that Will Fuller was out yesterday, but I think he came back.
Yes.
Back. So it should be we're at full power. We're at full power other than, Raekwon Davis, who is going to be out another week or two, Doug, I think, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I think this is the last week.
Okay, so the last week without our best defensive lineman, which will be great to have him back. And other than that, you're right. When I looked at that Colts injury report, I was like, oh, goodness gracious. That is some of your best players and your quarterback.
Well, I'll throw it out there for any Dolphins fans that actually do watch this. I mean, I'll throw them out there. Jack Doyle did not practice, back injury. Unsure as to whether or not he's going to play. I don't know. Hasn't practiced both days. Eric Fisher did come back today. It was a rest day on Wednesday, so I'm not worried about him playing. Our best linebacker, Darius Leonard, limited participant. He's had an ankle injury that's been nagging him all offseason. Quentin Nelson will not play this game against the Dolphins. They do have Chris Reed as a backup who was a starter for the Panthers all of last year and did primarily well. So I'm not insanely worried about Quentin Nelson against the Dolphins front four with that. But nevertheless, Kwity Paye, also with a hamstring injury, did not practice both days. That's our starting defensive end. He may not play. Braden Smith, I know, is not going to play. He's had a foot/thumb injury this whole season. Kari Willis did not practice again today. That's our starting safety. Antoine Woods, a defensive tackle, was a limited participant today. Rock Ya-Sin, who amazingly enough has been our best corner this year when everyone said this guy should have been cut in the offseason, is now playing his best football and has made maybe one mistake so far. He may not play against the Dolphins and those speedy wide receivers. Mark Lewinsky did not practice again today. Unsure what his problem is. And Jonathan Taylor was a limited participant both times. And obviously we know Carson Wentz, dealing with both of those ankles being sprained in the Rams game, says he feels a lot better than what he did Sunday, but nevertheless is still a limited participant. So if anyone wants to get a great laugh at how long that is, now's the time to do it, because I feel pain. Okay, I feel pain.
What you saying? Wentz is going to play then? Is that the idea?
Yeah, Wentz is going to play. Yeah, Wentz is going to play, and he says he's felt a lot better. Not 100%, but he definitely says his mobility is better than what it was Sunday.
My one counter argument would be that I think I'd rather have a couple more guys on the defense, offense out than have two out. I really would. I just don't want to watch Jacoby play football anymore. I know maybe Doug feels differently. I'm done with him. He throws 4 yards.
I'm there with you.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I honestly, like, and no disrespect to Tua, but I kind of am glad that Jacoby Brissett's playing in this game, because I know he's not going to torch our defense completely. I know your receivers would, but not him specifically. Right. But let's go ahead and get into this Miami team. And from what I could gather, stated that Miami is 11th currently in total defense. Obviously, the strong suit being the secondary. Xavier Howard, a couple other boys there that are, pretty good studs there. Xavier Howard was, talked about in free agency a lot last year and with trades, obviously, this year, but obviously wanted to stick behind, and it's paying dividends. But, the run defense for you guys, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe it's actually the strongest thing in the world, but it's, able to hold its own better than some other teams, I guess I should say. How overall do you feel with the way the Colts run their offense? And it's kind of weird that I'm saying this, because even I don't believe this. The Colts like to run the ball, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because last week we ran the ball 16 times against Tennessee, and we were averaging 5 yards a carry against Tennessee. But for some reason, Jonathan Taylor, who last year at the end of the year was the second best running back in all of the NFL outside of Derrick Henry, they only allowed him to rush 10 times in that game last week. Criminal underusage, if you ask me. Did not like what our coach had to say about why they adjusted away from that. But overall, we know that the Colts like to ground and pound. Who knows if that's going to be the game plan for with the way this injury report is coming out with the offensive line. But how do you feel about with the Colts' uncertainness? And we'll start with Doug on this. Uncertainness with Carson Wentz's mobility, uncertainness with the offensive line and game planning for the run. How do you feel your defense stacks up against Wentz and the Colts?
The rush defense on the Dolphins, I think, is the weakest part of that whole defense. Getting after the quarterback seems to, as the season's been going on, getting better and better. They had a few sacks on Carr last week. Couldn't get much pressure on Allen. I think they only had 1 sack on him the week before. But now that they're giving Jalen Phillips more reps, he seems to be getting more pressure, and he's all over the field. It's the run defense mostly. Barber had over 100 yards rushing last week against with the Raiders, but also that came in overtime when he had a big run. But that's like it's like the linebacker play and the run defense is where it's struggling just a little bit, and not having Raekwon Davis out there, it kind of definitely hurts as well. But with you guys having such injuries on that offensive line and your quarterback being banged up, I wouldn't be surprised. They showed something last week where in pivotal situations, they took Brandon Jones, who was our safety, and they blitzed him right up the middle. They had, 5 guys on the line. He was the sixth, and he was a delayed blitz right up the middle. So it would, the center would either go to the left or the right to take on one of the DTs, and then it was just the running back to cover Brandon Jones, and both times he got a sack on Carr. So I could see that happening a lot. I could see them blitzing Jerome Baker. I could see them blitzing off the edges because Carson Wentz having two, not 100% ankles, he's not going to be able to plant and get away from these blitzes coming at him. So I could see that happening. And if I were the Colts, I would probably run it more than put Wentz in a situation where he's either going to get hurt again or he's going to potentially throw an interception, because we got that ball hawk back there in Xavier Howard, who already has 2 turnovers in 3 games. So that's something you got to look out for.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to that, the Colts, I would not be surprised if the Dolphins do a lot of blitz packages, because that's one thing with this Colts offensive line being so banged up. It has not been good at blitz pickup protection. Wentz got sacked 2 times against Tennessee, both off blitzes. One of them was a delayed linebacker blitz coming off from a weak side edge, and it was just a delayed blitz coming around the outside, and nobody picked him up, and Wentz just got smothered. So I totally see that. One thing I would say, one thing Wentz has done a really great job of so far this season, and there's been not a ton to talk about with this Colts offense, but the great thing is the fewest amount of turnovers. I mean, only thrown 1 interception, and it was mainly a mistake in the play calling in which it was done. So I don't even necessarily blame Wentz too much. So he has done a pretty good job against some good defenses, not giving up, a lot of turnovers. Played the Seahawks. We played the Rams, no turnovers in that game, and then playing Tennessee, and their secondary can create some turnovers. But Carter, what about your guys' defense? How confident are you in what they're able to do against the Colts?
I don't know. They seem to be worse than last year. I don't know. I mean, they're probably still on pace. They still make turnovers. That's our huge thing. You know what I mean? Opportunistic. I got that word out. Okay, but this is how I see it going. Okay, I would say in terms of stopping the run, whoever you hand the ball off to is going to get 100 yards on us. I feel like that's just kind of par for the course at this point. You could hand it off to your punter, and I think he's going to get 100 yards. The thing is, what we're doing is we're giving up these huge chunk yard plays, which seem to be in the first half, sometimes on the very first drive. And this has happened 2 out of the 4 games, just a 60 or 70 yarder that just comes out of nowhere. And it's just like this breakdown in the defensive line where this hole is insane. And that's what I'll tell you right now. You're going to be able to run the ball. When it comes to pass defense, which is our strength apparently, I think Carr had, 400 yards, something like that. But there was also an OT, and also it was a tight game, so we had to kind of throw the ball a ton. The one thing I will say is that I don't think Wentz is going to have a very good day against our secondary. I think he'll be able to run the ball, but I just don't see Carson, especially on those bum ankles of his, having a good day, especially if he's looking to throw on X.
Gotcha. So you personally don't believe that any of these wide receivers that the Colts have pose much of a threat, even though Michael Pittman is top 30 in the league in reception yards, and Zach Pascal is actually top 5 in touchdowns caught through the first 3 weeks. That doesn't concern you in the slightest bit there?
I mean, not yet. I don't know if they're necessarily proven weapons, in my opinion. I don't know if they're proven weapons. I like Michael Pittman's YouTube channel. He has a pretty good YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think he's a great guy. But I feel like if X is shadowing whoever that number 1 on your team is, who do you say is the number 1 on the Colts?
at this moment in time, before T.Y. Hilton gets back, it's going to be Michael Pittman. But I would say the guy who makes the big play in the red zone, that's Zach Pascal for right now.
Got it.
And Doug, which running back concerns you most in this matchup? Jonathan Taylor or Nyheim Hines?
Taylor, definitely Jonathan Taylor. I
100%.
actually wanted him
All right.
when he was coming out.
Yeah, I know, because Hines obviously doesn't get the rushing carries that Jonathan Taylor does, but he has an aspect to his game that Jonathan Taylor doesn't, and that's the ability to catch and make people miss in the open field. He just does it better than a lot of other running backs can. Again, criminal how underused he is. I'm still waiting for that to come around, but let's kind of talk about your guys' offense here. So, had this written down. Miami right now is 29th in total offense going into week 4. I saw that little smirk there from both you guys. I mean, we could maybe have an understanding as to why. I'm sure you guys will explain here in a minute. I'm going to even check to see just how many passing touchdowns have been thrown. Only 1 touchdown's been thrown by Tua, and I'm sure that was probably in the first game. And Jacoby Brissett has yet to throw a touchdown. I know he did rush for 1, did he not?
Yeah, it was
He got that. We can't discount that one. That has to count because it is a touchdown nonetheless.
It was the scariest, slowest touchdown run I've ever seen in my entire life.
It was in slow motion.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, it's still you guys also having problems with scoring multiple points in a game. I mean, I'm sure with how week 2's game against Buffalo probably strewed those stats really bad. That's a loss that I'm sure we'll just stay away from. But I mean, is it worrisome to you now just how, inefficient the offense has been? Because, I've seen plays where some of your guys are getting some big plays. Waddle, 170 yards through 3 games, wasn't used very much in the last game, I believe. But in the first game, I mean, he did really well. And then obviously Devontae Parker is a very solid receiver. Gesicki, who I really like as a tight end. And then, Myles Gaskin can be used in the receiving game as well. I mean, is it concerning that you think they're acting like this, or do you think when Tua gets back, the offense gets better? Carter, we'll start with you on that.
It's concerning. I mean, it's concerning. I think you could start there. That's a pretty easy answer there. I would say an explanation for being this bad is, one, you could say you could pit it all on the offensive line. I'm not going to do that. I think it is pretty bad, but we're not going to do the whole explanation there. I would say in week 1, we had a pretty conservative game plan, and it was versus Bill Belichick, so that's tough. Week 2 and 3, we had the backup in the entire time, and we kind of babysat him. So I would say that is why 29th makes sense. However, is it concerning? Yes, because we have all of the weapons in the world, and we spent so much draft capital and so much money on bringing in talent like speedsters, but we can't use any of them because, 1, backup quarterback. But even if we had Tua in, we saw in the Bills game, the reason he got injured was that our offensive line makes the pocket collapse in a millisecond. It's insane. It's in
10 seconds, 10 sacks for the Miami Dolphins through 3 weeks, folks. If you think it's super bad for sack numbers for Wentz, I encourage you to look at it for a Dolphins perspective too.
Yeah, some of our offensive linemen just sometimes decide to not block that play. You know what I mean? They just kind of let them through. And they say, you know what? Have lunch. And that is concerning by itself.
And does it concern you also with the fact that you're going up against a freak in DeForest Buckner coming in this week? Does that concern you even more with how the offensive line's played?
Yes, he'll get 2 sacks.
Okay, I'm glad you have the confidence in saying that, because through 3 weeks the Colts have had 5 sacks and have hit the quarterback 12 times. DeForest Buckner has 1.5 of those sacks and also has 5 of the total QB hits. So this pass rush for the defensive line for Indianapolis has been atrocious. We have spent so much time over the offseason saying we need to improve the pass rush. Well, you traded away you let Danico Autry go in free agency. You let him go to the Titans. You didn't even try to keep in contact with him until it was too late. You let Justin Houston, a guy that's even at 33 years old is still a really good player in this league. You let him go to Baltimore, and then you drafted Kwity Paye, who so far has not panned out. I think in the future he'll be good, but for right now, as a short-term fix, he is not good right now. And everybody else, well, they're just not performing. I mean, there's no pass rush from this team at all. And the Colts have tried to get like blitz packages in there, and it still doesn't work. I mean, Doug, does that make you feel any better going into this week, or do you still feel that the offensive line is going to struggle with one-on-one matchups?
I think it makes me feel a little bit better, but what doesn't make me feel better is Jacoby Brissett's play. I think that is where it's really going to come down to how many points are the Dolphins going to score, because the Dolphins, Gaskin and Brown and even Ahmed were getting like 4 or 5 yards per carry, but then the Dolphins tended to sway away from the run and put the ball in Jacoby Brissett's hands. And before we were talking about the weapons the Dolphins had, and there were so many times where Gesicki was getting open on the left side, but Jacoby Brissett was staring on the right to Will Fuller, waiting for Fuller to get open, even though Fuller was open and he was still waiting for him. And there's a ton of time where the pocket was clean. Jacoby Brissett had time. And at one point in my film breakdown, I showed that all 5 of his routes were open, but he still stood there. And then he pumped for some reason. And then he looked to his right, and then he threw and even on that stupid play in their own 1 yard line, where it ended up being a safety, that's the type of play that you get the ball and you throw it. Like as soon as the ball hits your hands, you throw it either to Will Fuller, who was to his left, or Ahmed to his right. He also had Shaheen across in the middle. You get the ball, you throw it. What he did was he got the ball. He then turned and looked at Waddle, and then he lobbed it to Waddle, which then in turn made Waddle have to jump up in the air, get the ball. Then the Raider defender came in, tackle, safety. So
I remember that.
Last week was better because there was times where Jacoby Brissett had a protection in front of him, but he was pump faking when he didn't need to. He was staring down one side when there was open on the other, and vice versa. At one point, Will Fuller threw his hand up that he was open, and then he waited another extra 3 minutes to get him the ball when it could have been there was at least 3 touchdowns left on the field because Jacoby Brissett was either looking the wrong way or waiting too long on one receiver. So I'm getting a lot of harsh criticism for saying this, but Tua is the better quarterback of the two.
I totally agree with you. I don't even watch the Dolphins games, and I would totally agree with you.
Derek, I have a question for you, actually.
Sure.
So you had to endure, maybe be the best word for this, a entire season with Jacoby Brissett, right? I don't know what was the record that year? 7-9, something like that? Okay. So what would you say is your opinion from a Colts fan perspective? Like, what's his ceiling in a game? Like, what's the average, kind of workload you expect from Jacoby Brissett?
Gotcha. Well, I mean, first things first, before I answer that question, that play where you said it resulted in a safety. I don't know if anyone else recognized this. I'm sure you guys heard it. That is the first time in NFL history that a pass was thrown forward and yet was still resulted in a safety while not leaving the end zone. First time in NFL history. I don't know if anyone else remembers that, but I just wanted to let y'all know. But for Jacoby Brissett, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say Jacoby Brissett doesn't have his good games. He does have times when, he faces weaker defenses. He does do a pretty good job of tearing those defenses apart. There were a couple times in 2019. I think there were 2 games where he threw for over 300 yards, completed for about 80%, looked like a guy that any given Sunday could go and lead this team and do what needed to be done. Only issue is that didn't sustain, and it doesn't sustain because he's like Doug said, he gets in his own head. He doesn't think quickly. He doesn't react quickly. And that's the problem, is that you give him, if you give him freedom to do what he wants to do, he spends too much time looking instead of reacting. He should be much quicker, but at the same time, he just doesn't do that. And if you're wanting Jacoby Brissett to be a good quarterback in your system, you need to be a team that heavily relies on running the football. And I know the Dolphins certainly try to do that because Gaskin is a very good running back. But ultimately, like you said, with the offensive line, it can be kind of difficult to run the ball at times. And, when you are only averaging about 70 to 80 yards per game rushing, you're relying on Jacoby Brissett to get you the other 300 yards. That's just not going to happen most Sundays. So, I've always said it. He's a game manager. Don't believe that he is anything more than that. And sometimes I honestly think that's an insult to game managers, because when we think of game managers, we oftentimes think of Alex Smith, and Jacoby Brissett is not on Alex Smith's level, even close. But Jacoby Brissett, I think he is a great leader, great man to have in the locker room and in the community. Obviously, you love that about him. But obviously what you see on the football field, it's a different story. He gets in his own head too many times, and that is his downfall. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically it with that one. I hope that answered the question there.
It did.
Yeah, and you can kind of see it, because there were so many times that he wanted to throw it, but then he was like he didn't trust himself.
Yeah.
Because there were points where Gesicki was, he had about a step or two on the linebacker trailing him, and Brissett just had to drop it in front of Gesicki. He could have caught it and kept going, but he didn't trust that he could put it where it needed to. So then he just threw it to the check down. And I'm like, have that.
Saw that all game.
Take your balls out of your purse, put them on, and just throw the ball.
I'll be completely honest. When I talked about in the example that I gave Carter, that there were a few times where Jacoby Brissett was able to throw for 300 yards in the 2019 season. I'll be completely honest with you guys, and I hate saying this, because if this was last year's defense, Jacoby wouldn't putting up 200 on that defense. Problem is here, he might throw for 300 against us on Sunday, because I can tell you why. Obviously, no pass rush. We are super uncreative on how to get to the quarterback, and the Colts play a zone scheme. Okay, so if they can tell Jacoby, hey, this is the spots in the zone we want you to keep an eye on. These are your first two reads. You see them, you hit them. I don't care whether or not it's open or not, you hit them. It probably will work, because the Colts, while they haven't been giving up as many passing yards per play as some of these other defenses are against the teams they've played, the Colts have not been able to stop anyone when it comes to overall effectiveness. Quarterbacks are still throwing for 75% on us. Matt Stafford had near 300 yards, and the only reason Russell Wilson didn't have 300 on us was because they were beating us by 2.5 scores going into the fourth quarter, so they just ran the ball the whole rest of the time. So, this defense is giving up big plays still. It has a weakness for fast, technical receivers, and Jalen Waddle can be one of those. I am extremely terrified of Jalen Waddle in the open field. I just know he's going to hang 100 on us. I am positive that Devontae Parker is going to score at least once in this game, because Devontae Parker always seems to have one on the Colts every time we play them, and this defense is not stopping them in the red zone. I mean, it's one of the few things that the Colts haven't been able to do is red zone efficiency, was that the Colts are 5th in the NFL at making it to the red zone, but are 23rd in scoring inside the red zone. We are terrible at scoring inside the red zone. How's your guys' red zone offense? I'm curious.
Pretty good. The Dolphins defense is a bend not break defense. So in between the 20s, you'll probably get big chunks here and there. When they need to tighten it up, they tighten it up like last week, the 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. Dolphins run defense stop that to give the Dolphins the ball back on the Raiders side. But once you get inside the 20s, that Dolphin defense really tightens up and gets after you. So that's how it's always been under Flores. It's that bend not break. We'll give you within whatever between the 20s. And if you are going to score, it'll probably be on a big one like that, 45, 46-yard run from Singletary, or, you had last year the big touchdown pass on the Raiders. But other than that, once you get in the 20s, then all of a sudden you got all those ball hawks out there. Now with Javon Holland, Eric Rowe, McCourty, Byron Jones, Nick Needham, and Xavier Howard just flying all over the field. So it's a little harder once the field gets shorter on you.
Carter, what do you think about the Miami red zone offense going up against this Colts red zone defense? I'm actually going to look it up to see how our percentage is, but it's not been good. I can just tell you that.
Okay, so our offense. Well, we haven't scored a lot this season. In week 2, we had 0 points, if you remember that. I would say that when we get into the red zone, we've seemed to score. I don't think that says a lot because we haven't been in the red zone a ton. When we get the ball on short fields, that's a defensive turnover, and then we usually can at least get a pretty decent red zone attempt. I don't really know. I think we've been in the red zone like 6 times. Am I right, Doug? Am I right to say that?
Like against the Bills, that was a game that the Dolphins probably should have been in more. We held them to 14 points, and then after they scored those first 2 touchdowns, the Dolphin defense just shut down the Bills for the whole second half, a whole quarter and a half. And then the Dolphins offense was in the red zone 2 separate trips.
Oh, yeah.
Devontae Parker had a drop touchdown. Albert Wilson had a drop touchdown. There's a lot of drops that kind of hindered us from scoring in the red zone. And then we went for it on 4th. I guess we didn't, trust our defense too much. So we get there, but then there's the little stupid mistakes that tend to, falter us in the red zone.
You're still a little better than the Colts in red zone efficiency. You guys are 20th and the Colts are 23rd. So, I mean,
okay.
So a tad bit better. And that concerns me. That concerns me that you're better at that.
This tweet from last week when we were facing the Raiders, and it's something that I agree with like 100%, is somebody tweeted like, when the Dolphins are on defense, I'm more confident in us scoring than when we are on offense. And it's just like, yeah. I mean, that's such a terrible feeling, because then that night I had to watch Aaron Rodgers play football. And it was just, but because there's about 25 minutes between the Raiders-Dolphins game and then the Sunday night game. I had to go watch Jacoby Brissett and then Aaron Rodgers back to back. And it just felt so terrible because we've never had a quarterback like that ever. Like Dan Marino. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad because anytime either the offense or the defense in the red zone for the Colts, I don't feel confident at all. So, at least you can say your defense is better at it than that. But okay, a couple more questions here, and then we'll get into some score predictions. Doug, name one person on your offense that needs to step up to win this game.
Jacoby Brissett.
Okay. Well, I guess that was an easy one. Let me rephrase that. Besides easy. Jacoby Brissett, who needs to step up?
Austin Jackson. I'm gonna put it on Austin Jackson. He wafts. This is the thing about Austin Jackson, right? When the Dolphins took him with the 18th pick, not last year, the year before, it was a little bit of a reach, right? He didn't play. He donated the bone marrow to his sister. He didn't have a ton of experience. He was raw, super talented, but raw. And for taking that tackle at that pick, it was a reach. But, there was the run at tackle. So the Dolphins were like, hey, we need some type of tackle there. So they took him super raw. His rookie year wasn't great. And now so far this year, it's not great, but he is getting better. And I'll give him that. But when he's bad, he is bad. And when he's good, he's all right. He's manageable. For the Dolphins to do well, he needs to give Brissett more time. But this is where it kind of backtracks into Brissett being my answer, because when Brissett gets the time, the man is just pump faking until he burps the baby too much, essentially. But yeah, Austin Jackson needs to do better, and then that can also help open the run game more, and then maybe we don't have to put it into Brissett's hands.
Carter?
I remember you saying earlier that you thought Jalen Waddle in space really scares you. What I'll say about this is that he shouldn't scare you with his usage in this offense right now. I will say that right now is he did touch, I think he had like 10 catches or something last week, but it was for like 30 yards. It was insanely.
It was like 60 something yards, and it wasn't a lot. Yeah.
Right, because they throw the ball within 5 yards and they say, okay, break a bunch of tackles, go break a bunch of tackles. And it's just not, he's not done that yet. I mean, it's early in his career, so we shall see. So that is not my choice, at least for now. My choice is, I think this defense is going to have to carry us again through the entire season, which kind of sucks. So what I'm going to say is, when we get the ball, if we run well and Myles Gaskin is getting 4 or 5 a carry, I think that's what we need to do. I think to keep the ball out of Brissett's hands as much as possible, I think that's the goal. Give it to Myles Gaskin, and if he can step up, I think we will be good.
All right. And one more question here, and then we'll get into some score predictions. Doug, I'll start with you again on this. Special teams, solid or questionable?
For the Dolphins?
Yes, for the Dolphins.
Solid. I'll give it solid. The fact that he said solid is it's not great. It's not questionable. It's solid. Jakeem Grant always has the potential to break one off. You give Jakeem Grant any type of lane, any type of space in front of him, he's going to break one off. The thing that keeps it at the solid is that he wants to consistently break it off. That is Jakeem Grant's, if I'm going to make a play, this is when I need to make a play, is on special teams. So he tends to run backwards and try to run around and try to do too much. And then instead of just running forward, getting the extra 4 or 5 yards, he's like, oh, if I could just get around these 3 guys, I can get an extra 15 or something. And that's where it stays at solid and not great. So I would say solid because of the potential of Jakeem Grant to take one to the house.
Carter, you got anything else to add to that one?
Yes, I think we're godlike on the special teams. No, I'm just kidding. I think we are. I think we are. We're fine. Like he said, we're fine. The double-edged sword when it comes to Grant is that, like he said, like Doug said, he can break one at any point, but also he can fumble one at any point, and we've seen that as well. He just drops. He just drops punts sometimes. So I don't like every single time. I don't know about you, Doug, but every time he's about to catch one, I'm thinking, okay, he might get laid out and fumble, or he might just drop it, and it's so scary.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know a couple of those. All right, let's go into score predictions here. Colts versus the Dolphins. Since you are my guests, I will allow each of you to go first. Carter, why don't you go ahead and give me your score prediction for this Sunday's game?
I hate to come on another man's show and tell him his team's going to lose. I just
no, it's fine. That's what you need to do.
I feel like
that's what you need to do. Do you know what else? You know what's worse is having you two come on my show and tell you that I think my team's gonna lose. That's what's worse. Okay, I expect you to tell me that my team's gonna lose. I don't expect myself to tell you that we'll lose. So
yeah, okay, good to hear. Good to hear that you're humble about this. And I'll tell you this: I'm very objective. Because I went on a Bills podcast a couple weeks ago and I said we're going to get blown out, and we did. So I do pick it. I play it.
At least he's accurate.
Yes, I'm accurate. Okay, I didn't think we were going to get skunked, but we did. So I would say for the Colts game, I think the defense is going to be just on top of it. I really do. I don't know what that's about. I think it's going to be multiple turnovers. I think there could be some Agba action with maybe a forced fumble of some kind. Here's what I'll say. I think we should be 2-1. I said that earlier in the show. I think we should have beat the Raiders, even though we played an absolute terrible game. We should have beat the Raiders. And I think the Colts are a really they're in a 0-3 kind of ugly hole. They could definitely have a scraper win. It's definitely possible, like back against the wall type win. But I don't see it. We're at home. It's Brissett's now the starter for the second week. Maybe he's really got a grasp of this playbook, but this defense is going to hold you to 10, I think. So it's going to be like
Doug's facial expression when you said that. He just looks off to the side, like trying to avoid that laugh.
I'm being optimistic. Yeah, I would say, but score prediction like 21-10 Dolphins.
I'm cautiously optimistic, and that being because I am a Miami Dolphin fan. I've been a Dolphin fan for about 26 years, and I know that the Dolphins play up to their opponent, and they also play down to their opponent. And to me, this is one of the many. I didn't think this was going to be a trap game when the season started. I thought the Colts were going to be really good this year. This was one of the games that people thought, oh, the Dolphins aren't going to beat the Colts. But this could be a trap game because so many people think that the Dolphins are, just a little bit more better. That's horrible English than the Colts. Being that you guys have a laundry list of injuries, they should win. The Miami Dolphins should win this game. By how much? I want it to be a blowout. I love like a 35-13 win, but I just don't see it. And it's because of the fact that I've been a Dolphins fan for so long. So I'm going to say Dolphins win 24-17.
24-17. Okay. All right. So, I feel I don't want to be a homer. I obviously don't like to be that way. I do like to be objective when I do these. And I'll tell you, I'm going back and forth with my score prediction each time that I hear you guys talk about it. I think that the over-under on this game should be 38, and that's kind of high. I honestly think that should be pretty high. I don't think these teams get 38 points. I think it's more like 35 or lower. I think both of these defenses are going to force a lot of turnovers in regards to these offenses. Gosh. And it's sad that I have to think about this because I don't want it to be that way, but I do. I'll do this because I feel that this is the last chance for the Colts to save their season in some way, shape, or form. I think this is the last chance, and I'm going to be that homer for the Colts this time. Now, I'm not saying that I think the Colts absolutely will win because I'm honestly still sitting here as I'm saying this currently, thinking the Dolphins will most likely win, but I'm going to give it one more shot. If the Colts don't win this game, I will not pick them to win any game the rest of the season, and that might include the Jets. I'm just saying.
Wow.
So I will say they win 20-17, and that'll be the Colts. It's going to be a very close one. I think it's going to be one score, and it's going to be a low-scoring game, and defenses will run rampant with the turnovers. So, all right, well, that's going to do it, Colts fans, for this preview of the Colts versus the Dolphins. Thank you to my guests, Dudley Durong and Carter Melrose from DolphinsTalk.com for joining me today. And thank you guys again so much for the support. So close to 8,000 subscribers. Please help us out. Only about 25 away right now, I believe. So help smash the like buttons, guys. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for the support. Shout out to all my special guests today. And as always, go Colts.